Okay, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Steelers fans and Ravens fans, if you're tuning in to see how thoroughly your team dominated Pittsburgh on the ground. I'm making this a free video just because I'm not making people pay for access to this garbage during Christmas season. This is hopefully going to be a good video, but it's going to break down how utterly ridiculous the Steelers' performance was, especially in run defense in this game against Baltimore. And I will be honest with y'all, there is no way to make this video kind. It is unbelievable that this product was put on the field on an NFL Sunday. This level of football, this point in the season against a familiar opponent, this stuff just cannot happen. And they came in totally underprepared. Way too much communication happening as the ball is being snapped. I don't even have all those plays cut. There are some plays that actually didn't even hurt them as badly as they should have, but they were talking during the snap. I cut a bunch of plays to show the issues of the run defense, and then you'll see on a couple of these guys talking like as the ball snapped, not even looking at the ball. And some of that has to do with the actual play and how it unfolds. And sometimes it doesn't even have to do with how the play unfolds. It's just a mark of like how underprepared they were for anything Baltimore did before the snap and how poor of a communication job was happening, probably because the players themselves were asking questions pre-snap to players like Minka and PQ who, I don't know, I can't know whether they did a good job or not in terms of what they're explaining, but you shouldn't have these questions. You shouldn't have to be directing everybody pre-snap, and yet they were, so they weren't able to do their jobs as well, and PQ just didn't play well. I mean, he had some good snaps, and then he has a bunch of disaster reps, as you'll see here, but overall, like that kind of stuff just absolutely killed them because they couldn't do, amongst other things, but that kind of stuff just showing the lack of preparation. And the Ravens use motion a lot, not really at a rate that's above what I found, at least. Maybe there are elements to the motion that were different. I don't have like exact charting on all that stuff that I have looked into heavily yet, but I've seen a lot of Ravens games this year, and maybe there's one or two things that in this formation or situation they haven't done, but overall, like I didn't find this to be particularly unusual approach from them. They use motion at a pretty good rate, and they're actually one of the best teams in the league based on plays where they've used motion this year in running the ball and passing the ball. So it is like one of the top things you want to scout for when you're preparing for Baltimore, and the Steelers just didn't do it. So first snap here, I'm going to let it play, and then we'll walk through it. Okay, there's Derrick Henry, and Devontae KZ saved like 3 touchdowns in this game early on. But here's the motion with Ricard, and the Steelers shift in response to the motion. Okay, so this little shift motion across the line of scrimmage. Patrick Queen is tracking with Ricard now here. Now, that's okay for a step. I understand what he's thinking here, but watch the release. Watch the blockers, right? You can't be so locked in on one player. And I don't know if this was part of what he's being coached to do. Follow the fullback where he goes, he'll make you right. There's just no way in the NFL that's what he was being told to do, I would assume, but he is responding so heavily to where the fullback's going and not having any eyes for the fact that there are 2 pulling linemen going the opposite direction and the mesh is going this way. So it's okay to take one step here, but he is way out of position. No way can he be a part of this. I mean, you'll see this throughout the tape. There's no way this player here should be able to cut you off here from the ball play side here. That is crazy. You should never be this out of position. So again, one step where you're tracking, okay, lineman, and I'm hustling back this direction, and you're kind of processing the whole picture. You can't keep going here and get cut off by this player. Now you have absolutely no chance. Now Minka has to basically save you to get over here, and he's doing his job, which, by the way, you're now trying to do. He's playing his gap, doing his job here, reading here. Now he sees the football is going this way, but he's too far away to do anything about it. PQ, should be over here. So that's issue number one, is that nobody's in the proper position backside to be able to make a play on this. I shouldn't say nobody. PQ's not in a position to be able to make a proper play backside. Nobody's in his assigned spot, which is why this run is able to spring as much as it does. Now let's watch play side here, more of play side, I should say. Benton gets too far upfield here probably, and this space is too open. And you'll notice gap control is a big issue in this game. This is not Benton's worst rep by far. Very difficult rep for Hayward, right? Because he's got a puller and he's got a down blocker here. So he's processing, okay, down block away from me. I'm stepping down to get to the pullers, but you're not unblocked a lot as a defensive tackle. So this is basically a situation where he is trying to get across and into this gap so that they can't kick him out, right? He doesn't want to get kicked out here. They'll run right inside here. This blocker here will take Roberts. And so he is going to get inside and spill this to Roberts. Now, Roberts knows this. He trusts Hayward to do his job. Roberts is hustling to do his job. This is going to be tough. The offensive lineman going with the full head of steam, but you've got to get to the line of scrimmage and stand this guy up. Then you stop the back's feet. You've spilled him either in here, which is where the ball ends up going, in here, and PQ should be able to get over and make this play. Now, the problem is PQ's on a different planet, so he's not over here, so this run just goes right up the gut, and nobody's over here to be able to scrape over and make this play and hold it to a short gain. It's a great call by the Ravens. It's a great call, and so you're going to get something out of it, but ideally the damage is stopped right around here, and instead in this situation, it's allowed to get all the way to the safety level. And so really poor stuff. One of the issues with the Steelers, too, that I'll just keep noting, it's not like the primary thing on any of these plays that I can think of, but they played the most man coverage I think they've played all season long against the Ravens, and they didn't get out of it even when it was clearly impacting them later in the game. And so you'll see how late a lot of their corners are to join the action in the run defense because they've got eyes on receivers. So he's just locked in on his receiver here. And some of this is coaching. They should have been out of man coverage. I wouldn't be playing man coverage against Baltimore with this group of receivers. You want more zone coverage, in my opinion, so you can have eyes on the ball, especially with how multiple the Ravens' run scheme is. The fact that they're going to crack guys, ask the corners to replace. They're going to out-gap you, and so the corners have to play physical run defense. But that's not what the Steelers did. So in some ways, this is coaching. In other ways, this is, all right, let's be a ball player, buddy. Like, the handoff has literally happened. Can we really not? We're still, okay, now we're engaged in the fight. Okay, yeah, you're not participating in this at all. And, this is an issue with Joey Porter in a lot of games, just totally unfocused. He's not really locked in. There's not really great effort from him to be involved unless he's targeted. And even at times in that in zone coverage, he can be sort of lethargic. And I don't think it's a motor issue. I think it's just a focus issue. He doesn't necessarily understand or have the instincts for when he needs to be engaged. So he could also be a player that beats this block, which doesn't happen quickly, frankly. He flashes here. That's your first indication that this might be a run, is that this receiver flashes crack. And then you're looking, okay, now you've got, okay, yeah, I can see, I can kind of process what's happening. I see the blocks happening around me. And now can I get off this? Can I beat this block? Can I get involved here? No, not today. So that's sort of how the first run of the game went that was successful for Baltimore, and it was all sort of downhill from here. Here's the second one that I wanted to highlight. These are all pretty within, I think these are the same drive maybe, or the next drive. These are all within pretty quick succession of each other. A little bit more nuance involved by Henry here. Whereas, okay, so you've got a couple different things here. Guys talking pre-snap because they can't get lined up or communicate in times. Here's the motion. Again, man coverage, so the motion is pulling guys with them at the snap. Way more players are looking at the motion than there should be, not necessarily in this one, but in other snaps. Minka and Porter are talking pre-snap. Minka's not seeing the ball when it's snapped. Here's his head, looking over here, talking to Porter. Porter also not seeing the ball when it's snapped. That doesn't necessarily make this a disastrous play, but it's a contribution. It's another indicator that pre-snap there was a lot of this going on. Some people have tweeted out other plays. I don't even have a lot of the worst plays in that way on here, but I have a couple, and so you'll be able to see this consistently being a theme. Here's Lowry standing in his gap. Actually, good job by him for once. He was pretty rough in this game. Benton, it continues to be a major issue holding the point of attack. I mean, he's already giving ground here. You can see he's already going backwards to try and get off this block. As soon as you're already, his technique is to move backward and try and shed the block like this. But once you get this additional shove, then you're way out of your gap. So this is just a massive crater that shouldn't exist, which makes life way harder on Minka because this player is able to basically get to him. I mean, a nudge here, and you're on to Minka. Minka's flying up into this. No chance. What are you going to do? You're going to take on a guard, stack and shed him as a safety? It's just not going to happen. So he is doing the best he can here to fill, but because Benton is so easily knocked way out of the gap, now Minka has to defend all this space, and that's a huge issue. So that's a massive part of why this run springs for what it does. Now watch Henry. He also makes this a really good run because Hayward is basically, I don't think he's supposed to be, but he basically has to because this gap is so significantly bigger now. Two-gapping here to try and play off this block. And he's completely controlling Ronnie Stanley here. And so Hayward's technique, look at his pad level, everything's great. Hands inside, this is exactly what you want. Roberts is playing off him. Now watch Henry make them both wrong with this little head fake. Right here, bang, little head fake. They both pop outside, little peekaboo. They both look this way. You can see them both Yeah, looking this way. There goes Henry this side. So he just jukes them both out from behind the blocker, uses the block to his advantage. So even though Hayward played it with great technique, he got him out of their assigned gap. Now, in my understanding is that Hayward's playing this inside here, and I think he peeks once he sees, he's trying to two-gap, but once he sees Henry try and peek outside here, he tries to go there, and I think that's part of the issue here. Now, would he have been able to make this tackle? I think maybe if he doesn't peek, he could have because he did control the blocker. Roberts is the one I think is right here. He is actually working outside, but he is also trying to play it smart too. He's trying to slow play it so that if Henry slips, he can help either way. So I think both of them had the right approach. Henry just makes a great play, gets him out of the gap and bursts through here. And you can see Benton's way downfield. You know, some people say a little hold there maybe, but I'm not big on those slight holds. I'm not big on. Get off the block, control the block, don't give up 5 yards off the snap and have to fight back and to get in position. It's just bad technique. It's bad strategy by Benton. It's been happening all season. It's not been coached out. It's a problem. It's not just a problem for him. Lowry does this as well. Monty Adams does this. You can't back up to get off blocks in the NFL. When a double comes, you'll get blown up, and even if it doesn't come and you get off the block, it's a 4 or 5 yard gain by the time that you have. And it makes life way harder for everybody else in run defense too. So that's a big part of the issue here is just how many things are happening wrong play side. Some people will note Preston Smith. Just a note here, the Steelers changed it up in the second half, but typically when they play Baltimore, their ends just take Lamar Jackson on these zone reads. And so they're just always taking the pull, and then somebody else is worrying about the handoff basically here. You know, PQ this is another part of it here. This isn't necessarily his fault, but he comes out here because they don't have anybody on Andrews. So again, they're communicating pre-snap. They don't have anybody on Andrews. I just don't like this strategy at all. Like, just send Minka across the field here, or play or play even a different package or whatever it might be. But you can't. I just don't think there's any use to having another linebacker out of the box against this team. So this would have been something you pre-game, before in the week of preparation, you plan for, but you have to have another way basically of defending this player than empty the box here. You can't just be conceding this sort of space as a box against three. I mean, look at the amount of gaps that are here. Now you're asking your corners to fit the run. By the way, another rep where Joey Porter has absolutely no idea it's a run. Oh, it's a run. He's realizing it here. Henry is 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. It's just not good enough. Like, he's not in position to be able to do anything in terms of run defense. And so it's one thing if he's getting blocked right away, but that's not even happening. Herbig holds up the block here. They actually are in a totally wrong spot here, and I think that's what Minka's telling him is that you've got outside contain here, and you've got to tell Herbig that. But Herbig's got to probably bump down in here. You can see even as Likely leaves, they've got two gaps here, right? And so he's kind of like, oh, wait, I can block him. You can go. And it's just like, okay, there's literally two guys because Porter's not even involved here. So you don't even have to worry about him. Ideally, he's free here because Herbig hits the receiver. He should be IDing run and getting involved in here. But he's just not. He's just not active enough in run support, and that was a big issue too. Again, it's not his primary responsibility, but just looking at the whole play and seeing at how many of these players are uninvolved in the run defense is a big issue. Okay, number 3 is a light box. Ravens had a lot of success going to light boxes. They ran against stacked boxes a lot in the game, but a lot of their biggest success came lightening the box and then using the zone reads to block a defender without actually blocking with the body. Then you've got the numbers that you need, and everything's sort of on your side at that point. The motion took care of another guy a lot of the time. So you will see many snaps. I already showed you a couple where it's like, oh, we have too many guys to actually block these people. Or wait, a blocker gets to the second level and nobody's even there for them to block. So you have blockers wandering around looking for people to block on massive gains. I mean, just unheard of in the NFL to have that happening. And so here you've got Henry kind of going backside with this concept, and I'll kind of walk through what some of the issues are. Mainly, the biggest thing is Peyton Wilson here, I think, lets one guy get two people, really, instead of reading the mesh point here. So he should be reading this mesh point, right, because Preston Smith is going to take the quarterback. Like I said, the ends for this Pittsburgh typically have hit Lamar or taken Lamar in these situations. So then he's got to make sure he's got eyes here, and the back's got the ball, and I've got to make sure I stay clean, and this is your contain area right here. So Hayward's going to step down, and this play ends up looking bad for Benton and Hayward, even though they aren't really, necessarily catalyst for why the play ended up the way that it does. Benton slips and falls. Hayward is trying to very tough here. He's trying to control this blocker and get play side here. That's pretty difficult. So basically what they need is okay, Ronnie Stanley can't commit to Hayward and block Peyton Wilson. That's just poor spacing and reaction and reading by Wilson. But Wilson lets himself get on Hayward's back, which allows Stanley to be able to block him and bump Hayward down. So Hayward essentially gets doubled as he's already trying to beat a really tough block, get to the other side of the center, one of the quickest centers in the league in Linderbaum. Then he also gets bumped by Stanley while he's going that way, so that knocks him off balance. Wilson lets himself get blocked instead of being outside of Stanley. Once Stanley makes his commitment, you should never, ever, ever have yourself be blocked here. He's literally legs tangled with Hayward. It's just bad spacing. It's a bad read. And I know he's trying to think, I'm going to get here and make this play, but that's Hayward's responsibility. Your responsibility is here. He's got the quarterback. You have to know your responsibilities from the week of preparation and make sure that this run doesn't slip past you, and he doesn't. Obviously, a rookie, he makes mistakes. KZ saves another play from being even bigger, but that's sort of the big catalyst on that. Again, I don't know whether guys don't know what gaps they're supposed to have or if they just were cheating and not doing their job, but it happened so many times during the game that there was definitely something lost in the communication preparation process through this game. Now, heavier box, right? Steelers have 6 linemen here. So they're trying something different, and it actually works, and they can't tackle Derrick Henry. And so Baltimore blows this one. Henry blows the read. They don't block Dean Lowry. This stop should be made in space. Queen actually scrapes over, and they still can't make the play and get him on the ground. Still a chunk play. So I'll let it run here. They stand the blocks up, hold the point of attack way better. Benton, I still hate how you do this, but watch Benton on this play. Concede space, work over the top of a block, then try to rally back. You get bumped off again. It's just, this is not gap control. You are literally in somebody else's planet. But for everybody else, this is how it's done basically. Hayward standing a guy up, Loudermilk way better. Now he tries to overtake here. Rosengarten tries to overtake for Faalele on Loudermilk, but Loudermilk does a good job here and actually disrupts this play. So 2 guys are blocking him, and he's taking both of them, and that's not how it's supposed to work. Faalele is supposed to move on, or Rosengarten is supposed to get down here to get Queen. Either way, the Steelers play this right. Herbig comes off. He's got Lamar. Nobody blocks Lowry on this play, and I think Rosengard just overshot it, basically. Lowry's inside of him. He should be blocking something here. So nobody blocks Lowry. So they've got him. Like, this is a play for a loss, no doubt. And Lowry just can't tackle him. Patrick Queen comes over, can't tackle him, and it's like a 9-yard gain. So, I mean, even when they're right, they didn't finish. Now, Steelers tackled horrible in the whole game. I'm not going to show all the plays that were big chunk plays just because they couldn't tackle, because you don't need me to explain to you what went wrong in those situations. But this is just an example of when the Ravens tried to go heavy and the Steelers matched them going heavy, because it's 12 here with Ricard. We're going to call him, I'm going to call him a tight end for these purposes, but 22, whatever you want to call it, or if you want to call it 21, if you want to consider him a back. I consider him a tight end because he aligns and is used more like a tight end. So let's say it's 12 personnel here and that's how you're playing. Okay, Steelers are going to match with heavy personnel, and they actually do a good job conceptually, and then they can't get the runner on the ground. And, I know that's part of the challenge with Henry, but, look, this is the NFL. You got to get guys on the ground when you do play it right. So that was just part of it. I'm not going to show you all the other bad tackling plays, really, but that was definitely a part of it, as the tackling was so poor. All right. This one's a lot more complex. Again, I mentioned the 48% man coverage. That was most in the NFL in Week 16. So they were chasing wide receivers everywhere in these pre-snap motions. The Ravens used pre-snap motion on 38 or motion. It wasn't all motion at the snap, but a lot of it is. But they used motion on 38 snaps in this game as an offense, and so that's about where they've been. There's been a couple games they've been higher, usually somewhere in the high 20s and 30 or to 30 range. So I'm not sure that it was a prepper, that there wasn't anything on tape regarding this. So this is just nobody is doing their job basically here. And this kind of became what it devolved to, is everyone is trying to play hero ball. You can see the communication pre-snap. Minka's telling, is this Pierre, that he's following the receiver. Now watch these guys. Look at the line. Look at the direction they're moving the line. This guy's in motion. Zay Flowers comes in motion here at the snap across the field. What are you doing chasing him? Whose job is that if he pops out here? Minka's job. Both linebackers are reacting to that. Now, Wilson's sort of in his gap here, so he's kind of more fine than Queen is. But look at this strong of a reaction. What is Queen looking at? look, your gap, buddy, and look where all of these guys are going. All the line is releasing this way. So he's just not even reading the release of the line. They're completely out-gapped. The communication errors pre-snap. They're all talking. Nobody's looking at what they should be. Nobody's even looking at the mesh point here. Queen's looking at this motion play. This guy can't even get the ball. Look at where the quarterback is. How's he going to get this guy the ball? Unless it's a fake handoff, unless it's a play action and a throw, in which case that is not your responsibility. You're not covering Zay Flowers. Bishop tries to track with him, which I understand a little bit, but again, how many steps are we going to take before we realize this ball's handed off? Here he is when he realizes it. Look where the ball is. I mean, look at the distance. Are we even looking in the backfield? Are we even trying to read this thing out? Look at the release of the lineman. We're not processing fast enough at any level of this defense. I'm not even saying I primarily blame Bishop on this because I understand he's tracking with Flowers, but your linebacker being completely out of his gap. I mean, look at this. Faalele gets to the second level, and who should I block? Who do I need to block? Oh, I'm going to turn around and just find somebody to block. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Like, this player here should not be turning around to block you here. I think it's just, again, looking at it for a second is one thing. Look how far out of the gap before he realizes, oh, there's no chance to make a play here. So again, Hayward, who was great all game, but just had a disastrous situation to deal with, he stands up Macari. He fends off the block from Linderbaum, but he just can't get off this block. This is his gap. This isn't even his gap. And so you've got a situation where Watt is literally coming from the backside, and he still gets play side before either of the linebacker or either of the play side off ball defenders, Queen and Bishop, get to the ball. He's closer to the ball than these guys are. I mean, it's just untenable to think that this happens in the NFL. Total lack of preparation. Again, if one snap, it's bad. To do this all game to a team is crazy. And you can see Highsmith you can count the number of gaps here and the number of players that they have, by the way, and see that there's a good chance they're out-gapped without even guys getting out of position, which they do. 2 play side defenders get out of position. Looking at this bubble. Look at this bubble. Where do you think the run might be going to? Nothing in terms of the pre-snap. Everybody just watching motion, communicating at the snap, being caught off guard when the ball is snapped. Oh, wait, they're snapped. Oh, wait, they're running. And the ball's off and away. And Highsmith is just trying to do his job over here. This guy kind of, what do they call this? When you like fakes the block here, then slips to the second level. Bishop just makes the block for him because he's so far out of position. By the way, Corey Trice just he's like here when he realizes it's a run. Oh, it's a run? I mean, come on, buddy. Like, come on. We got to get involved here. Like, you cannot allow this to be a splash play through this gap. You have to fill. You have to be active in run support, and just wasn't. And Highsmith is just, okay, I'm setting the edge then. That blocker releases. I'm standing up Stanley and trying to get play side, and he almost makes the play, but Trice can't even make the play once he does realize it. And you have KZ coming over to make like his 118th tackle of the day. But it's just like there's just so many issues. It's hard to even know where to begin. Honestly, it's so bad that I don't even know I'd say his primary responsibility. I mean, PQ obviously didn't play well, and that play, if I'm putting it on one person, is more on him probably than anybody else. But nobody's right, really. Everybody's just chasing motion, running around, and nobody's even looking at what's happening with the ball. These aren't even like 3 fakes. And okay, now I understand like the fake action. They're not even faking the motion. They're not even pretending to give the ball to the motion. And yet everybody's like chasing it and getting out of their gap. And it just, you can't play football this way in the NFL. All right, 3 more, I promise. This is almost over. Benton gets knocked back here, and that's a big issue. This is about gap integrity, in my opinion, with Benton and Lowry. Just no gap integrity in terms of how they play this. Look at where Benton, and this is what I'm talking about with Benton and his technique. He's not really getting bodied off the ball here. He's got hands inside. He's got pad level fine. He's just backing up to try and get off the block rather than standing, stacking, shedding. He's backing up to try and get off this block. And so look how much ground he's given by the time that he gets the ball. He's already given up 3 yards, and so it's hard to go backwards off the ball by your own admission, like go backwards. Faalele's not bodying him off the ball. He's backing up. You can see his feet. He's backing up. And now he's in Queen's lap, by the way, which, Queen doesn't. Again, Henry's kind of making Queen wrong in this situation. Very similar play to the one with Roberts, but the Steelers started to do that with the one with Roberts that I showed earlier. The Steelers started to do this with Roberts, and that they were just firing him, and they made a couple plays that way. But you can see Hayward owns Macari, Roberts, they're just trying to fire in to stop the back's feet and redirect them and spill them hopefully to where everybody else is in their gap. But because of the way that Benton and Queen play this, they're not able to make the play too. So they're successful play side here for a change. Hayward gets off the block, throws Macari. Roberts crosses face, and he's in here. Benton even has gap control, even though I don't like his integrity here because he's further back off the ball now at this point. But Queen, either he has to flash in here and make this play when the back's feet is stopped. He can't not slow play this. And if you take that chance as an elite athlete, I can live with it if you miss the tackle. But he slow plays it, and then he's slow to get over. He gathers again here to get over and make this play. Now, why is this such a big gap for them to run through backside? Well, because Dean Lowry, I have no idea what you're doing, my friend. He is getting all the way upfield and allowing himself to get sealed off. Rosengard is not bodying him. This is just literally like an influence blocks. He moves this way. You should immediately be like, oh, he's trying to cut me off from this point. I'm going to fight play side. Nope. Lowry keeps going up the field and allows himself to be completely angled off. So again, you can't do this. Like, you can't do this. You have to have gap integrity. Your heels need to be, look where your heels need to be right in this area here, and you need to be walling off this block, holding this guy up, and then fighting to get play side and condensing this space. Yeah, you can't get beat out here, but you don't have to run all the way up the arc and give up. Look at this crater. I mean, that is a crater. So Queen has to get all the way over here then to make a play because of how big this space is that Henry has to run through. And Henry's able to see everything so easily because the craters are so massive. And so you can sort of see how Lowry makes this whole situation worse. And then Benton coming and get knocked off the ball also makes it harder for Queen. So not making excuses for him. He's got to be better, but that's a big part of the issue as well. And honestly, Fitzpatrick could be faster to read this probably too, if we're just being totally fair to everybody. He could be faster to come downhill and read this. Although at this point, you're probably just worried about trying to save a touchdown as the last line of defense because everything else had been such a disaster. So I think those are all the main points from this one. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see the good run defense players mostly do their job and the bad run defense players are like a zero. And that is sort of how you end up where you are. It's such a team concept. And the Steelers have like 4 good run defenders, Watt, Highsmith, Hayward, and Roberts. And the rest are really not very good. So the Ravens, again, I don't think they necessarily, this is play number 7, I don't think they necessarily trying to get Roberts out of the box specifically maybe here. Maybe there's something in the game plan, but they do get Roberts out of the box, so you get your best run defender out of the box with this motion. Steelers shift to counter it against heavy personnel. I mean, this wouldn't be my game plan probably to do it this way. But again, they're trying to more zone coverage. They're trying to shift that way to deal with it. Minka actually does the right thing here. I saw some people saying, he took a chance and he missed it. No, he's playing his gap here. So as they shift, this is his gap. So just to establish things for people, Hayward's here, Minka's here, Benton's backside A here, what ends up being the backside A. And Minka plays his gap fast. He's trying to get downhill and make a play. Now, yeah, because he didn't hang out here, he doesn't have the opportunity to scrape over, but he tries to make a play, but unfortunately everybody else is so wrong here that it's really difficult to make. So you can see to make this play. Once motion takes Roberts out of the box, Queen's reading from the backside. Nothing else for him to worry about, right? He's watching the release. Every blocker. This is just outside zone to the left. This is not complicated. And yet what you're seeing is him consistently caught. Nobody's even blocking you, buddy. You got to get play side. You got to get play side. And so he's reading this out. I know he's slow playing his gap, but there's no cutback here. You can work play side. And so he's a little bit slow to get play side. Minka gets over here, but you can see the issues again with being out-gapped, and I think that's one of the biggest issues in the game too, is that Highsmith is trying to get outside of this block, so he's got to basically play this from a head-up technique. He's got to basically play this strong here. This guy's trying to release out around him, though. So Stanley, again, 2 guys to block 1 guy in 1 gap, extends the entire thing pretty easily without even really having to block him. They don't even move him, but it's just he's moving with them to try and keep contained, and then, excuse me, you've got this massive crater. So even though Hayward wins and beats Macari, it's so much space for a defensive tackle to make a play in against Derrick Henry. It's just a ton of space, and it's hard to live that way. Now, again, I wish I should have cut the high shot too. You've got Trice out here, zone defense, and he is watching likely as he releases. I think this is a zone one, but he's watching likely as he releases, and this is just way late in terms of the run recognition and then allowing yourself to get blocked. What are you doing, Chief? Get down in here and make a play. Highsmith is setting the edge. You have to read off this block and get in here and make a play. and instead he turns and engages the blocker. So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's barely played. I understand that, but come on. This is NFL football. If you're going to play, you're going to get criticized when you do stuff like that. So the corner's really uninvolved in run support was an issue, was a secondary issue combined with the communication errors pre-snap. Again, they're communicating. This one's at least a clean communication. Fitzpatrick gets through. Maybe he could dive here. It would be the one thing I'd say. Maybe he could dive and try to slow him down. That could have made a difference there. But at least he's trying to play fast. Everybody else is sitting on their heels or chasing motion. He's trying to play fast and come downhill, and he misses opportunity to make a play in part because Henry is just able to watch him bounce out here, right? He's on this track, then he swells away from Fitzpatrick, comes back out a little bit to get all, because he has so much space to get all the way out here away from Hayward too. So obviously he's a hard back to track, but when you give him a sliver of space, if you give Derrick Henry a runway, it's like the most fearsome thing in the world, basically. But his ability to get to all that space makes it really hard for guys to stop him in space in the backfield because he just has so much room to be able to elude them. So being able to stop his feet would have been big in the backfield, but it wasn't possible in this play. So Trice being out of the equation as a run defender here and allowing himself to get blocked by turning into the blocker makes this even bigger gain than already would. It would have been a first down, obviously, but turns it into nearly a touchdown and one of the plays that probably sealed the game at that point. So, yeah, good effort by James Pierre, I will say, coming from the backside there. Also, this is the last play here, but there are probably a million different things here, and people who watch the Ravens more could say, oh, yeah, this is what they do in this situation. The Steelers should have known that or something. I watch them a good bit, but there's always more context that can be added to these, so hopefully more people do videos like this. I'm just saying as much as I can from the perspective I've seen from tape study. The last play might be the worst play of them all, and I know what you're thinking, how in the world is that possible? But look at the communication again. Patrick Queen's not looking at the ball when it's snapped. I'm not sure what he's saying, to be honest, if he's trying to talk to Roberts or if he's talking to Trice over here, who's yelling something while holding his mouthpiece, it looks like. Trice is following the motion. It looks like he's saying bump out. I'm not sure why. Maybe he thinks a screen is coming. I don't know. I don't know what but either way, Patrick Queen flies all the way out of the box. Just like, this is your guy in coverage. He just flies all the way out of the box. And so he's not even a part of the equation on the backside of this. And maybe he thinks, oh, I'm picking up likely in this situation. And this looks like a jet. But look how the motion just pulls him. Again, motion guy clears. He's not getting the ball, right? He's not getting the ball. We're chasing him all the way out here. Handoff comes, and it doesn't even matter. I mean, Monty Adams and Dean Lowry do a horrendous job, so this run looks even easier. But, I mean, this is insanity. This cannot happen. So Queen's totally out of his gap, which would be here. Herbig has to recognize that once it happens and have more urgency to get down the line of scrimmage because they're basically not blocking him, and they're fine for it. That can't happen. So now you have all these guys for the play side, for the what ends up being the backside, but the play side defenders where this run's going. You have all these guys to account for them. Now Hayward still wins, and so does Loudermilk here. But again, you have just a massive cutback. So this should have been able to be stopped here, but because nobody did their job backside. And Monty Adams just ridiculous. Again, he's backing up to try and get off blocks. These guys aren't getting bodied off the ball. They're just backing up to get off blocks. Look at Lowry against Rosengard. How much ground are you going to give up? Get that off that block and be able to make a play. I mean, look how far downfield he is. He's trying to get play side and make a play on this block. No, get back here and make this play. Look at what's happening around you and get off this block and make this play. Even if you're trying to play side into this gap, you are not getting there right now. You're conceding massive amounts of space trying to do that. And so he's all the way downfield by the time he's even able to get off the block, or by the time he decides to get off the block, however way you want to say it, because Rosengarten's literally blocking him with one arm. This is just not professional effort. These guys get absolutely blown off the ball. So front side, look at this. Highsmith, Loudermilk, Hayward, Roberts, these guys all win. They do their job. Backside, absolute disaster. Herbig doesn't come down. When you're unblocked in these situations, you have to step down way faster. Instead, he drifts, and I understand Lamar can be a threat. I get it. He hasn't run all game. Like, I'd rather, if he's going to pull it. You've got guys out here, but you can't give up this kind of space. And I'm not primarily blaming Herbig because Queen is nowhere to be found in this. And again, Corey Trice just not necessarily realizing what's going on. Oh, wait, it's a run. And I get it. You barely played. But these are all the things that contribute, right? When runs become, okay, the initial wave, sure, yeah, Queen not in his gap, that's a massive problem. How does it become a massive splash play? well, this guy's way off the ball. This guy's way off the ball. There's absolutely no backside at all to this run. Herbig doesn't step down. Trice doesn't realize fast enough. All those things contribute to why it becomes a disaster play instead of just a bad play. So when you combine all those factors against one of the best running backs that's ever lived, you're going to have a really rough day at the office. So, unfortunately, I don't have answers to everything in terms of Steelers should have done this better. The Steelers should have done that better. I think they tried to do some different things, and they had some successful run defense plays in this game. But obviously, when you give up the kind of stuff that they gave up, I'm not going to spend a lot of time like, oh, here's the positive plays in this game in run defense. I mean, it was the reason that they lost. Lamar was clean, but they could not stop the Ravens on the ground whatsoever. Henry had 162 yards rushing. Hill added another 30, and so 220 yards rushing for almost 6 yards a carry on the day with Baltimore was a massive issue. And a big part of it was communication, how they handled and responded to motion at the snap, being out-gapped, sometimes as a result of that, sometimes just in the way they were lined up, and they chose to defend the Ravens' different personnel groupings. And all those things, I think, contributed. When they had 3 linebackers on the field, it actually went better. It wasn't perfect, but usually it was missed tackles were the issue when they allowed runs there, when they had 3 linebackers on the field. So that was a good counter that they had. Just didn't go to it enough, even against some of the Ravens' other personnels. You should have been willing to live with getting hurt some other places, and they just weren't willing to do that enough. So when you play Baltimore, you have to stop them on the ground. They are one of the few teams in the league that I would say that that's true about, and the Steelers' complete failure to do that was the reason, I think the biggest reason that they lost this game. That is rare for me to say about a team that runs the football, but that's how dominant Baltimore was in this game. When you combine that with the fact that Pittsburgh didn't have the offensive pieces they did, I'm not going to blame that side of the ball as much. But that and the 2 turnovers, I would say, are the biggest reason why this game ended up being what it was. And either way, what you're going to quibble about, the biggest thing in the game was actually Russ throwing a pick. Okay. Here's what I want to say. You can't play defense like this in the NFL. If you argue about how much contribution it had to the result of the game, this is not NFL caliber defense, and that has to be fixed. And that is your preparation and your coaching and your game planning throughout the week, not being ready. And then the players that were in the game, whether it was Trice because of an injury, you got to be prepared. Whether it's Monty Adams coming back from an injury, you got to be prepared. Dean Lowry because Ogunjobi wasn't available, who, by the way, I don't think would have fixed this, got to be prepared. And they weren't, and that's a part of it. And then, consistent issues continue with Queen and Wilson in terms of where their eyes are after the snap. And then just technique. You can't have guys, and the Steelers have allowed this to go on. I don't know whether they're trying to coach it out and players just aren't listening. You can't have guys back up to try and get off blocks against a team that gets downhill like the Ravens do. You're asking to either get blown by or to make a ton of block or tackles way down the field. If you're able to get off blocks to make them, and they weren't in this game either. So all of that is a big, big factor in why the Steelers ended up where they are. So hopefully it helps explain some things, or just seeing some snaps helps people see some things. I don't like tweeting negative things without being able to back it up, and the videos have given me a platform to be able to do that. So hopefully you enjoy this, and we'll have more of these over on the Audibles and Analytics Network. In the meantime, have a great Christmas, have a great holidays, whatever you celebrate, and I'll be back with hopefully more of these videos. I'm not sure how many after the Chiefs game because there'll be holidays and everything, but I'll try to drop another one before the playoffs if I get a chance. So appreciate everybody taking the time to watch.